Matthew chapter 12, we are going to be in verses 33 to 37. Either make the tree good, and its fruit will be good, or make the tree bad, and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is known by its fruit. Brood of vipers, how can you speak good things when you are evil? For the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. A good person produces good things from his storeroom of good, and an evil person produces evil things from his storeroom of evil. I tell you that on the day of judgment, people will have to account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. All right, I'm going to go back. You probably thought, that's going to be a good upper, right? It's Valentine's week. It's from the heart. Oh, that's going to be so positive. And then Jesus just like went, no. Yeah, it's not all just sunshine and rainbows and things like that. Sometimes you got to deal with tough stuff. In the context where we've been, he is talking to Pharisees and his disciples at the same time, but it's the Pharisees who have engaged with him. And so, like we looked at last week, they are accusing him of being a blasphemer. They're accusing him of healing this man by the power of Satan. As we talked about last week, they actually use the words, Lord, you're just a Lord of a dung heap. That's what they say about Jesus. This is still the same conversation. It's still the same people. And if we remember that, it makes sense why Jesus is so pointed, okay? And why he's so all of a sudden serious. It wasn't really all of a sudden. It just seems like that because these printers put these little blanks here in a new heading and we think, oh, new thing. No, still the same thing. So he goes from this point about, how are you doing these things? I bet it's by the power of Satan, to him saying, well, how do you see whether or not somebody's good? You know a tree by its fruit. Okay, so in a sense, he first talks about himself and is saying in a way, if you want to know whether or not I'm from God or from Satan, all you have to do is look at the fruit of my ministry. What am I saying? What am I doing? How does that land? And how does it help or hurt people? Does it build people up? Does it tear people down? Does it speak love and compassion, or does it speak hatred and bigotry? What is the fruit of what I'm doing? Okay, so he's answering all those questions and saying, well, just look at the fruit. And so in a way, there's boldness. This is Jesus, so it doesn't take a lot of boldness, but it would be bold for us. In a way, there's boldness to be able to say to somebody, well, then just look at everything I do and look at everything I see, and you be the judge. And there will be times, if you haven't had them already, where you will have to do that. I was in a church one time where, because of some, I don't even know, I'm not sure I still quite understand, but let's just say Satan had been sowing some seeds among a few people. And so there was some conflict. And where those seeds had been sown, there had arisen some was misunderstanding, some was outright dishonest, false accusation against the elders as a whole, okay? And as all of that went on, one of the elders' wives, we were talking one Sunday night before church started. I just sat down in the pew behind her, and we were talking. She goes, she said, the thing that hurts the most, and what I don't understand, is why don't people remember who we are? Okay, there were all these false accusations. And she said, I don't understand why they don't just remember who we are. If they would just know us, they would know this can't be true and isn't true. That's a frustrating place to be. It's exactly where Jesus was. And it's exactly where Jesus people will find themselves from time to time as Satan throws his fiery darts. And my answer to her was something from Peter, actually, in his letters, where Peter says that foolish people are going to do that. They're going to throw all kinds of ridiculous accusations and lies at you. And what's the answer? Peter says that they will be proven foolish. How? through the way that you live your life. That who you are, what you do, and what you say, and the way you conduct your life is the evidence one way or the other. And if you're people of God, that will show. You will know a tree by its fruit. So I just encouraged her. I said, it's hard. I was going through the same thing. I had arrows being slung at me just because I was standing up for and with the elders. And what you do is just hold your ground and stay right. You don't go down with them. You just stay true. And then people will know this is the kind of character that you have. Is it the hard way? Yes, it is. Is it the right way? Yes, it is. And is it the effective way? Yes, that's what Peter's saying. Yes, it is. So Jesus says, let's look at the fruit. Just look at what I'm doing. And I'm bringing people hope. I'm bringing people joy. I'm bringing people healing. I'm bringing people grace. I'm bringing people compassion. Is that good fruit or bad? You be the judge. If I'm bringing people closer to God, how in the world are you saying that I'm from Beelzebub? Then he flips it, right? He flips it because it does apply both ways. And I'm going to come on down here. He then flips it and says, you could look at yourselves by the same standard. So let's look at the Pharisees. What kind of fruit are they bearing? Are they bringing hope? No, they're generally bringing piles and piles of guilt and burden on people. Are they showing compassion? No. When somebody gets healed, not only do they not rejoice with those who rejoice, they then point fingers, well, you must be a sinner. You remember in John 9 where Jesus heals the guy who is born blind? And what do? Do they rejoice that this guy has been healed? No. They put him through an interrogation. They accuse him. They accuse his parents. They kick him out of the synagogue. What kind of fruit is that? Division, doubt, hatred, anger, bitterness. What kind of fruit is that? So Jesus just says, listen, I don't mind if you look at what I'm doing and what I'm saying, because I know what I'm doing and what I'm saying. And I know whether it's good or bad fruit, and so does God the Father. But understand the microscope in this case is also a mirror. And you're going to have to look at your own. And how's that going to go? So he challenges them that way. Let's read this next part, verse 34 to 35. Brood of vipers. So you know where Jesus stands. How can you speak good things when you are evil? Jesus gives them the answer. Let's look at the fruit that I'm bearing, and let's look at the fruit you're bearing. Well, you brood of vipers. It's a quick assessment. How are you even going to speak anything good? You can't bring hope. Your hearts are evil. For the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. And so a good person produces good things from his storeroom of good, and an evil person, though, is going to bring forth things that are evil from his storeroom. He says, and guys, I can see which one it is, and all I have to do is listen. He could have said, what did you just say about me? Would good people say that someone who is healing in the name of the Father and the Holy Spirit is from the devil? No, that wouldn't be happening. But guys, you just did it. That's what he's telling them. You just did that. There's no such thing. We need to get this in our heads, because just as a country as a whole, and then it doesn't actually stop at either of the oceans, it spreads around the world, we don't get this. But there's no such thing as a true person of grace who still vomits hatred. Period. There's no asterisk. There's no discussion. If anytime we are spewing hate, we are not of God. And we can say, well, those are just words. What do you think Jesus would say to that? We kind of already did, but we'll get there. We'll get there. We just can't do it. The proof of whether or not our heart is truly yielding to the Holy Spirit is how we speak. And I think that we have, I don't know who's done this, if it's the world or Christians, actually. I think maybe Christians have done it more than the world. We have made our words of lesser value in a way that Jesus never intended and does not confirm in this text, to say things like, well, I was just talking. You ever heard that one? Well, I was just talking. You usually hear it in an argument, don't you? Well, I was just saying something. Yeah, but what you said. And so we'll try to minimize it. Well, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's the biggest lie we tell, isn't it? Whole lives have been shattered by words. Marriages have been shattered by words. Relationships with children, adult children, have been destroyed by words. There are times when we can forgive the actions, but because of the flow of the hateful words still come, the forgiveness can't take root, and the relationships are destroyed. Words don't just matter. Words deeply matter, so much that Jesus will say what he's going to say next, and he really wants us to get. But I'm not there yet, because I still got some things I want to show you, okay? This is a typical 1990s Soviet Russian living room, okay? This is not a picture of a apartment that we were at or a flat that we were at, but it is extremely similar. In fact, I think we had that TV in our apartment, belonged to our landlady. But this is when we were in Russia in the 90s. This is typically what a lot of the apartments we went to look like. And I told some of you this story before, but today I got visuals, okay? So this will sink in a little bit better. But one time we were at a Bible study. We had a Bible study every week, a little small group Bible study in the flat of one of our members, and actually in their parents' house, in their parents' flat, the Kuznetsovs. And great family. The son and the daughter worked for Tanya and I at different times as our interpreters, part-time interpreters, and wonderful people. I wish we could find them because they left Russia. We had no way to contact them, but really loved both of them, and their mom was awesome. She hosted the Bible study just out of the kindness of her own heart and hospitality. She made all the food, the tea, all of that stuff, never let us ever provide it. She just always did it, and she invited people to the Bible study. We used to have a lady that was in her late 80s who was Ukrainian, who lived through Stalin's purges and through the famines of World War II, and shared with us what that was like. I wish I could have had a phone to record all of that, and those didn't exist yet. But to have had an interview with her would have been fascinating. Another story at another time. But this one night, may even be the night that she told us the other story, we're sitting around the table, just like this, in a living room, just like this. And after the Bible study, we always have, tea and dessert or something, or she used to make these things called shangi, which were kind of like a Texas biscuit, but with a mashed potato with lots of sour cream and garlic sort of a thing, filling on top. Awesome. Simple, but really, really good. And so we were about to do all of that. Tanya was at home sick. We didn't get sick very often, but she was at home not feeling well. And so it was just me. That matters to the story. So she brings out a cake. And when she brings out this cake, it's this really nice, just a yellow cake. It was kind of a sweet cornbread sort of a cake. They don't make their things as sweet as ours, so it's more like cornbread, and it was cornmeal. And in the center was this homemade, from her garden, homemade raspberry jam. It was good. Okay, it was really, really good, and some of you know the story, but it was fantastic. Then she says, I've got another cake, and she brings out a second cake, and the second cake is not as good as the raspberry one, but it's good. But it's like this sort of cream cheese, but not quite cream cheese filling, a little bit sweet, but not overly so, but it was good. It just needed what we would do with a little bit of Mexican vanilla, frankly, is what it needed. But it was good, okay? So this is all going fine. She goes, I have one more cake. You assume, right? Best for last? Well, that raspberry one's going to be pretty hard to beat, okay? But saving the best for last. So what kind of a cake would you bring out if you want to top raspberry or a cream cheese-filled cake? What would you have? Strawberry. She grew strawberries in her garden that were amazing. That would have been great. Of course, most of us would have been happy with a chocolate-filled cake, right? Something like that, a good filling. I like that. That would have been great. That's not what I got. What I got, and why Tanya still rejoices to this day that she was homesick, was this cake. I don't know that you can see from there exactly what's in that cake, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit. That is a sardine-filled cake. Okay? Different places eat different things, and part of your missions training is you smile, lick your teeth, and eat whatever is put before you. That's what you do in missions, because that's what Jesus said when he sent out the disciples, and then when he sent out the 72, he says, literally, eat whatever they put before you, and you be thankful. Oh, Lord, no. Yes. Okay. I'm going to tell you, because this was kind of like cornbread, the cake, it was not overly sweet, that it's not as horrible as it would sound to the typical American. It really wasn't. It wasn't actually horrible, which is really strange to say. But the visual alone of going from raspberry to cream cheesy sort of thing to chopped up canned fish, nah, that's not ever going to be at the Cheesecake Factory. I am confident, okay? That is not happening, but that is what we got. What's inside the cake matters, does it not? You get it? Okay. What's inside our heart matters. And sometimes, the Pharisees were bad about this. Sometimes we think that the presentation of what's outside will make up for what's inside. And it does not. It does not. We think that the things that we do outwardly will make what's inside our heart not matter. And that is not the truth. The heart absolutely matters. Words matter because they reveal what is in the heart. Our words are when you take off the lid of the third cake and go, oh, chopped fish, really? Let's put a cap back on that. Words and our inner thoughts and those words matter tremendously, because that's who we really are. That's what Jesus is getting at. You can't have a good cake and a bad filling. That cake is what the filling is. That'll be true when you put your fork in it and take a big bite. What's in there absolutely matters. James drives this point home. Let's go to James chapter 3, starting in verse 9. In verse 9. With the tongue we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in God's likeness. Blessing and cursing come out of the same mouth. My brothers and sisters, these things should not be this way. Does a spring pour out sweet and bitter water from the same opening? Can a fig tree produce olives? My brothers and sisters, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a saltwater spring yield fresh water. Now, James is a bit more metaphorical. I mean, Jesus is using metaphors, but James sticks with them longer, right? It never comes out as pointed as what Jesus said, but the point definitely still comes through. We sometimes will sing, "Behold our God." And then how do we speak of those with whom we disagree? How do we speak of those who have hurt us? How do we speak of those that we just don't like? Those two things can't come out of the same heart and us claim to be people of the cross and of the Spirit. There's not an option. Here in James, he says, with the tongue we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in God's likeness. And that just cannot be the way of a Christian. And this is where I was going. We will brush aside, well, it was a text, or it was a meme, or it was a video, or it was a this, or whatever. And if you think I'm talking about the news, I'm not at all. This was all decided and written well before any of the events of this week. I'm talking about you and me, okay? I'm talking about us. We're the people we're responsible for. If you were to be judged by the content of your text messaging app, heaven or hell, be honest. If I were to judge how much, if God were to judge how much, if your neighbor was to judge how much you actually love people by the things you've said about people in your messaging app. Good tree, bad tree. How would that go? Say, well, I'm glad that's not going to happen. Wrong. Because we'll see in a minute, Jesus says that's exactly what is going to happen. That is what the Messiah has planned and will reside over and reign over. Those things absolutely matter. How your words hit other people is not an unimportant thing. It is everything. It's not just people who are authors of books or people who have to have who write articles in the newspaper or whatever. Those aren't the only people who have to be wordsmiths, people who carefully craft what they say. It's all of us. We all have to be careful. And we have to be careful before they're ever thought to be said, because ultimately they're just a product of what's in here. And once they're out, to pretend we don't think them, we're only lying to ourselves. Because Jesus says it's out of the overflow of the heart that came. So the things we say, we were talking the other day about traffic. It's a spiritual warfare issue. We joke about it, but it's not a joke. It can be a spiritual warfare issue. The things we think about other people in traffic, or they cut in line at Walmart at the checkout or whatever, and we immediately think things or say things or mumble things. What we mumble shouts in heaven. Think about that for a second. If what we mumble shouts in heaven, who does he say we are? All those things matter. And we say, well, it just matters what I do, not what I say. If somebody says, hey, I need some help cleaning up a bathroom here, and you go and you help and you do a great job and you clean, those toilets are cleaner than your grandmother's dishes, just absolutely fantastic job. But for the next 3 weeks, all you do is gripe and complain that you had to do it. Which of those is the lasting impression? And we've all been there. Which of those is the lasting impression, right? So the words did matter, didn't they? And they actually, in that case, would matter more than the deeds you did. Part of what we need to understand is our words are deeds. They are deeds. Words are ministry. Words are grace when they're right. They can be good and they can have power, but they also have the power to destroy. It can go either way. But our words are as much deeds as anything else we do, and they have as much impact as anything else that we do. So thank you so much, Brian, just in time. So one of the other things that we had to deal with when we were living in Russia was things like this. I don't expect anybody to know what that trailer says, but it says молоко, which is milk, okay? This is a milk trailer. And on the surface, I'm just going to ask you on the surface, how many of you want to get your week's gallon of milk from that trailer? Anybody? We got a few hands. And nobody's ever, make sure you label anything you bring to the potluck. We want to know. But it's such a nasty trailer. And I remember the first time that I saw one of these, and it was close to our apartment building. It was actually, I think it was dirtier than this, wasn't it? Like there were some brown splotches, and it's coming from a dairy, so you do the math. And it just a nasty, nasty looking trailer. And our interpreter, the same interpreter I was talking about a second ago, Olya, she told us, she said she worked on dairy farms, and she was studying to be I almost said ventriloquist. That's not right. A veterinarian. They are not the same, although if you combine them, that could be fun. She was studying to be a veterinarian, and she's working out on these dairy farms and different quality dairy farms, some that would meet high standards here and some that definitely would not. She said, when you see those trailers, James, never buy that milk. Well, I was like, what? That was not an issue. I was never going to buy anything out of these trailers. But she said, never buy it out of that trailer. And I was like, and there's a line. There's like 20 people in line waiting with their own containers. And I'm like, well, they're all getting, what's the problem with it? And she said, well, it's really cheap, and that's why people are in line. It's really, really inexpensive. She said, but I worked at one of those while I was in school, And she said those are the farms with all the worst, oldest equipment. And very often, the milking machine falls off the udder and picks up what's on the floor. And they don't have filters. They don't have stops. If it gets in, it gets in. She said, so I guarantee you, and she used the English word, didn't she? I guarantee you there are poops in there. So, which is really funny in a Russian accent. There are poops, and there are poops in there. And so she's telling us, never buy that milk. So here's why I bring this up. You are a child of God. You're trying to live by the Spirit of God. You want to bear good fruit. What level of poop do you think you should allow in the milk of your soul, and you still think it'll be good to use? Because out of the overflow of that tank are going to be your words, and He's going to save, and your acquittal or your judgment. At what level are you making excuses right now for the poop that's in your milk? And at what level do you think that that's actually acceptable to Jesus? You got to drink first. Is it really worthwhile to fight for the right to speak things that aren't right? Or is it better to say, you know what? I think I got changes to make. I think I've got a heart that needs some cleansing. And we're putting some filters on this thing because I want my milk filtered. I got to be honest. I never, ever went to one of those trailers. But how often could coming to any of us, self very much included, be like standing in line for poop milk? What are you going to get from that heart? What are you going to produce for others? It matters so much that Jesus says, I tell you that on the day of judgment, people will have to account for every careless word they speak. And careless isn't just like light, and I didn't think about it. Think of it as being devoid of care. I didn't care. I don't care how they think about that. I don't care what they hear when I say that. I want to say that. You got poop in your milk. We're going to stand before God and have to answer for that. Is that worth it? Is it really worth it? And do you think you're going to have a winning argument? You think you'll be able to say, well, Jesus, it was just Facebook Messenger. Is it really that big a deal? If He's asking you about it, and He says He is, it's that big a deal. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. And you can't gaslight Jesus. Oh, Jesus, this is just words, but I love those people. Do you? Because here's what you said about them. Here, 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 and here. He's going to come with the receipts. You're not going to be able to fool Him. He knows what's in here. Even the things you didn't say out loud or only mumbled under your breath. N.T. Wright puts casual words here and careless words here as casual words also reveal deep attitudes. Jesus said it long before Sigmund Freud did in the famous Freudian slip. The secret someone is trying to hide pops out of their mouth before they can stop it. As a result, casual words will be used on the day of judgment as a reliable indicator of what really matters. The state of the heart, what we say, how we say it, why we say it, is all going to be laid before the Lord. So what do we need to be saying? Paul writes to the church at Ephesus and says this, no foul language should come out of your mouth. Unwholesome talk is another way it's translated. But only what is good for building up someone in need so that it gives grace to those who hear. And don't grieve the Holy Spirit. You were sealed by Him for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness, which is often what's messing up our hearts, isn't it? Bitterness gets us in so much trouble, gets us to say such crazy, ridiculous things. Get rid of all bitterness, anger and wrath, shouting and slander. Let it be removed from you, along with all malice. And replace all of that. And be kind, compassionate to one another, forgiving one another, just as God also forgave you in Christ. What's in the heart? If it's grace in the heart, it'll be grace in the words. If it's grace in the words, it'll be grace in the deeds. If it's grace in the deeds, it'll be grace to a world that badly needs it. If it's bigotry, if it's hatred, if it's bitterness, if it's anger, don't you think the world's already overloaded with that? Don't you think that's the last thing they need more of? We got enough bad fruit. Let's be trees that bear good fruit by yielding to the Holy Spirit and yielding to what Christ is trying to do in us.